What's up, guys, and welcome back to the Combat and Canvas YouTube channel. We are here, Brady, Max. Before we get into things, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Click the link in our bio for the gaming channel, which is doing pretty solid. So go over there and check that out if you're into combat sports gaming. But today we're talking about one fighter in particular, and his name is Payton Talbott. Payton won this past weekend in amazing fashion.
Yeah.
And we've been on this kid for a while. Ever since we saw him on Dana White Contender Series, we both talked about it on a different show on our podcast, how this kid was so good and he's going to be, potentially a big thing. And then he goes into the UFC with his debut fight, wins in great fashion. Then he just has another fantastic win this past weekend. This kid is special. So
Yeah,
I
man.
guess what we're going to talk about here is the potential of Peyton Talbot and the future of Peyton Talbot. So yeah,
Yeah.
just off the bat, man, this kid, what he's just so good.
Yeah. You said it right. When we saw him on the Contender Series, we were just so impressed. He wasn't able to get the finish that in that fight, but every other fight in his career has been a finish. So this guy just has that killer instinct where he goes in there to get the job done by finish, and he's gonna try to just do that at all costs. Just come forward, and I think he's gonna be a fan favorite because of that. Where fans love action, and even if you're winning, if you're not doing it in an entertaining way, sometimes fans aren't going to like you. We talk about this all the time. Bilal Muhammad,
Yep, yep,
not exactly a prolific finisher, but on one of the craziest win streaks we've seen in a while, but doesn't really have that many fans compared to if he was getting finishes. And I think Peyton Talbot just has that it factor where he seems like he just has that killer instinct in there where he's just so focused, determined to break the guys down. What's crazy is he talked about this with on the on Ariel Helwani show where he said that whenever he first got into MMA, he was only like 18, 19 years old. So he's only 25 years old now. So he's only been doing this seriously for like 6 years. So I
yeah,
think that the potential is through the roof where he still hasn't lost a fight and he's only been doing it for that many years. And he's already in the UFC and facing some guys that are by no means bad competition. I mean, Cameron Simon, we were up on him just a little bit ago saying that he could be a good prospect. Now he's on a 2-fight losing streak, and
yeah,
he looked like he did not even belong in the ring with Peyton Talbot, where Talbot just completely dominated him this last weekend at UFC Vegas 89. And I said it on our podcast that I think that Peyton Talbot could be a future champion. I think with performances like that, I'm just feeling a lot better about that take because I was saying it was
yeah,
kind of a crazy statement on the pod, but I mean, when you put on performances like that, that makes me feel really good about it because I think he has all the factors to be the next star in that division as well as a potential champion in that division.
yeah. And we'll take a look at it here. This guy, man, if you take a look, we have his Sherdog page pulled up, man. We'll start from the bottom. Like before he was a pro, he was an amateur,
Yeah.
what, 18 years old. Obviously, you can see
Yeah, he said he was
2018.
still in college
Actually,
while
this is like
fighting in amateurs.
this was like almost to the day, March 16th,
Yeah.
2018. Like he came in, got a second round submission, and then the next fight he comes back same year, a couple months later, gets a TKO.
Yeah.
Then a couple months later, gets a TKO, then a TKO, and then a KO. It looks like he took a entire year and a half off here, but he got a
Yeah.
KO.
And he
Um,
was doing all of that. He talked about that in the Ariel interview as well. Go check it out if you missed it, where he was studying psychology and say what you want about psychology majors. Yeah, it's still studying to get a degree. And
yeah,
he was doing all of that while also getting finishes as an amateur MMA fighter and then working the transition to as a pro, all while going to school. Man, this is where I started realizing that this guy could be a serious contender where he's able to balance all of that in his life and still find success because it's not easy to balance all those things, and he's seemingly making it look easy.
yeah, and then he comes up, obviously in after those 5 amateur wins, goes into the pro scene, 2021, November 27, 2021, gets a knockout in his first pro fight, and then he comes back, gets another knockout, and then another one, and then another one. You can see here flying knee KO.
Yep.
And then another one, and then like when you're on Uriah Faber's, obviously you can see 3 fights on Uriah Faber's A1 Combat,
Yep.
all three by knockout. And they're like, okay, this guy, man, he's gonna get a shot. So he gets a shot. A couple months after that win, his last
Yeah.
amateur win, he gets a shot at Dana White Contender Series. Now this is his first and only decision victory. But if you saw the fight on Contender Series, there's a reason why we hyped this kid up. Um, he looks so good, even in with it being a decision, like people coming
Yeah.
in. Obviously, if you look at his record before he's coming in, you're like, oh my god, this guy's gonna come in and just destroy someone and get a KO. Well, he didn't get the KO, but he did destroy the guy, and he just like looked so flawless. He barely got touched. He was doing insane spin kicks, flips, elbows, mixing it in anywhere he could, and looked so good that Dana White obviously had no option but to give the kid a contract. And then
Yeah.
earlier um, sorry, a couple months after that, he gets his first UFC actual official fight against Nick Aguilar, and he wins by submission in round
Yep.
three, which was
First pro submission.
another great performance. Yeah, first pro
Yeah.
submission inside the UFC. Then we just saw him this past weekend, March 23rd, 2024,
Yep.
UFC on ESPN 53. Obviously, he Boston Namajunas was the main event, but a lot of people, again, after this card, talking about Payton Talbott. After everything that happened, there was a bite.
Yeah.
There was a couple
That card
knockouts.
was a little crazy.
There it was a wild card, but a lot of the talk was about Payton Talbott because, like you said earlier, Cameron Simon was the guy who came into the UFC, was on an undefeated streak, looked so good, ended up losing to Christian Rodriguez, who was at still, I guess, to this day, is like the prospect killer. He was
Yep.
beating everybody. But then they put him up against Peyton Talbot, and this I thought it was a good fight because you have two guys who were, one in Cameron Simon, who was being touted as the future, the next up in the division, though he took a loss. But then obviously Christian Rodriguez moved up in weight. But Cameron Simon, being the possible next one up, and then you have Peyton Talbot come in, and it's like, okay, this kid could be the next one up. Let's see. Let's put them against each other. Let's see who's going to be the next one up. And Peyton Talbot made Cameron Simon look like he didn't even belong in there. He
Yeah.
styled on him. He
It was bad.
Yeah, it was really bad. Like Cameron Simon barely even touched him, and that's surprising considering how Cameron Simon was doing previously.
Yeah.
And Peyton was just mixing it up so insanely. Like it's so hard to describe, right? Because obviously Cameron Simon is not an amateur or anything like that. He's not. He's very
Yeah.
good. But Peyton, the movement, I think it was the movement that was really giving him some struggle. That Peyton Talbot mixes things together so weirdly that you can't read it. Like
Yeah.
for instance, I talked about this the other week, or sorry, the other day when we were on the podcast. Cameron Simon threw a kick, a body kick. Peyton Talbot caught it and then threw a kick of his own, spinning kick of his own out of catching the body kick. Like, how do you prepare for this? You
Yeah.
throw a body kick, he catches it, and then all of a sudden you're getting hit with a spinning back kick, and it landed. Like, this kid's out of nowhere. He's throwing elbows in all different directions. He's styling on you. He's dancing. He's taunting. It's like, what do
Yeah.
you do? And obviously, that leaves us to the champ of the division. The bantamweight champion of the world is Sugar Sean O'Malley, who, without really comparing him, is similar. He's the one who's styling on people. I mean, we saw what he just did to Cheeto Vera the other
Yeah.
weekend. He's dancing. We've seen in his previous fights, he's acting like he's playing basketball between the legs, shooting on them, taking dunks, hitting them with elbows, body shots, punches, and just styling on people and making them look like fools. He's done it every single time. He, with the exception of maybe Peter Yan, but he's really, I mean, he made Aljo look like an amateur, and Aljo is
Yeah.
not at all. He was the longest
Yeah.
reigning champion. And it's like when you have two guys with a similar style, that makes for such an interesting fight. But obviously, we're not dumb. Peyton Talbot is not getting a championship shot anytime soon. I
Yeah.
mean, he's only 2 fights into the UFC. But fantasy booking it,
Yeah, fantasy booking, I do see a
it's
lot of
like,
similarities in their game where both of them have so much tools in the arsenal. I do think that Sean probably has a little bit less one-shot power and a little bit less explosive, but they both love to use their range. And I think that Sean is a little bit more defensive orientated and a little bit more footwork orientated, where I feel like Talbot's just more come forward, go for your head. But I do see a lot of the similarities, especially in terms of their frame, where they're both rangy for the
Yeah,
division and they both
definitely.
got the
Tall.
afros. Yeah. So I'd honestly would love to see that matchup. And I feel like if Talbot can put it all together and if they matchmake him correctly, we'll talk about that a little bit later, who he should fight next. But if they matchmake him right and don't rush him in against somebody too crazy, where, like we've said, he has not really faced that much adversity in his career just because he's been destroying guys. But it
Yeah,
does make you wonder what is going to happen when he does get tested. But man, despite that, I do still think that he could become a champion. What stands out to me is that each time we see him, despite how good he looked when we first saw him on the Contender Series, he gets better every single time out. In his
yeah,
first UFC debut coming off the Contender Series, where he didn't get the finish on the Contender Series, he comes out and gets his first ever pro submission. And then in his next fight, he faces Cameron Simon, his toughest test of his career, and makes it look absolutely easy. So I feel like what's going to happen in a few years where he has even more time to work on his skills, because, man, I can only imagine it's going to be scary for the bantamweights. And I can't wait to see who they should face him up with next, because I feel like there's a lot of fun matchups that he could be in. And I feel like, honestly, he would be in a fun fight with no matter who he gets matched up with. That's the type of style he
100%.
has.
Yeah, yeah. He's a guy. He's a guy who Dana White talks about when he talks about fighters he likes.
Yeah.
The all action, the likes to just stand and bang and mix it up and make it fun. And he has the very fan favorable style where
Yes.
we talk about a guy like Bilal Muhammad who, you know, deserves a title shot.
Yeah.
On paper, he deserves a title shot, but the crowd reaction and even seemingly Dana White's reaction is just, well, you're just boring, like you're not fun to watch. So why would we want to watch you in a pay per view main event? This kid's the opposite of that because obviously we're not talking about pay per view main events for him yet,
Yeah.
but when you're in there getting decision wins to the point where people are like, "Oh my god, you need a contract for this decision win because you were so good." And if you know Dana White Contender Series, he loves to give to the finishes. He
Yep.
loves those finishes. Um, but like I said, he just styled on the guy so well. And to his credit, the dude he faced was tough as nails. But
Yeah.
like, he's just so entertaining to watch. And
Yeah.
not only that, he's weird. And what I mean by that is he's. I hate to bring it back to the Sean O'Malley um, comparison, but Sean O'Malley is obviously very polarizing. He's loved, but he's also very hated. And I think that Payton could be the same exact thing. You
Yep.
either love the guy or you're going to hate the guy because of how weird he is. And by weird, I mean go check out his YouTube channel and then come back.
Yes. Yes, guys,
He's
go check it
strange.
out. It's some of the most crazy psychedelic acid trip type editing style for an
Yeah,
MMA fighter. So it's just a super unique channel, and I think that it's definitely gonna be something that is gonna be powerful for him in terms of building his fan base. Where a lot
yeah,
of MMA fighters do MMA, I mean
he's
YouTube
different.
channels do just kind of stick to the formula of talking about MMA and just
We're
making it
training.
more just only MMA orientated, where Peyton's channel is just more of just like everything he's doing in his life, plus everything
Yeah,
he's thinking in his life with these crazy editing of like, yeah, you guys just
yeah,
have to check it out. It's hard to even explain the style.
yeah. Like when you see guys like, for instance, Corey Sandhagen, he has a YouTube channel. He's
Yeah.
out there practicing and
Yeah.
training, like
Keeping
showing you
lights
training
down.
methods. You have guys like Daniel Cormier, who has like interview style, but he's interviewing MMA people. You
Yeah.
have Volkanovski, who's kind of mixes
Look
it
at his
up, but he
both.
does like the cooking. But then Peyton is just like nothing like that
Yeah.
at all. He's just like a regular, like I almost want to say vlog channel, but it's like a vlog
Yeah.
mixed with like you might be on acid. Like
Yeah, dude.
he's hitting shit with swords, he's playing with nunchucks, he's skateboarding, he's making weird
Yeah,
edits. Like,
snowboarding. Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy, but that's the
That was
thing
a
that
yeah.
people will draw to that as fans
Yeah.
in positive and negative ways.
Yep,
You know,
exactly.
there's people are gonna be like, "This guy is weird. I don't like him," like
Yeah, he paints his
because
nails.
he paints his nails. He's maybe too cocky. Like I don't like this guy. Da da da. But then there's people, obviously us, who like that. I like the
Yeah,
kid. I want him to
exactly.
be confident. Obviously, his record shows that he's confident.
Yeah.
So
It's
yeah,
refreshing to
polarizing
see.
figure.
Yeah, it's refreshing to see guys who are just unapologetically themselves and don't really care. He doesn't really
Yeah,
seem to care where a lot of guys seem to, like, kind of almost put on this, like, MMA, like, what they think an MMA fighter should act like. Well, I feel like that's partially him getting into the sport late, where he doesn't have that years of childhood, exposure to mixed martial arts and mixed martial arts culture, and where it is kind of more
yeah,
of a masculine, uh, dominated field. And I just think that it's super refreshing, and I know that he's not putting on something because it just seems so genuine, and you can tell that it's just how he is, and he just says what he's thinking. And
yeah,
thankfully, it's not, I can actually get behind this where some guys who say what they think are just I don't even know what they're saying, but hey, I'm glad that the UFC does give the fighters a way to show their personalities, even if sometimes it is a little bit cringy with some of the fighters, but it
yeah,
does make me grateful for just how well we're able to get to know each and every athlete, where in boxing and other, uh, sports like, football and basketball, I feel like it's a little bit more fabricated, but in MMA, whenever there is someone who's really genuinely themselves, they get that chance to shine. They don't try to the company doesn't try to mold them into something they're not. They just kinda take them for who they are and work with that. So I think that
yeah.
is super good for MMA in terms of building stars, and I think that Payton Talbot could be that next star.
Yeah, and then when you're speaking about him outside of the cage, you also have to speak about him inside of the cage. Now, what I mean by this is I've talked about it on our podcast this past week, but um, the style of these new fighters, man. We have to talk about the style of these new fighters. There's guys coming in like Peyton Talbot who, if you didn't see the MMA Hour interview, he basically says that he didn't know UFC was a thing. He didn't know MMA was a thing. He was sitting at a sushi restaurant, I believe he said, and he
Yep.
saw a commercial for Conor McGregor fight preview. And he was like, "What the heck is this? This can't be real. Like, there's no people actually fighting like this. They pay people like, what the heck?" I guess he looked into it and it was a thing, so he did it. Now, coming in like that with zero experience, like you have zero, he's starting from nothing. He doesn't have collegiate wrestling experience. He was never a BJJ guy. He was never in any sort of karate or anything like that. So just going to an MMA gym and starting at ground zero as an MMA fighter is, I think, personally, a huge perk
Yeah.
because when you have a wrestler who's trying to learn striking, it's much harder because they're always thinking about wrestling. When you have a striker who's trying to learn about wrestling, it's much harder because you just want to learn about striking. And,
Yeah.
the guys who are wrestlers were wrestlers for so long and vice versa with the strikers. But when you're an MMA guy, you're starting at nothing. You don't have wrestling, you don't have striking. So you're working on them at the same time together and you're building them together instead of being better at one and lesser at the other. He's the same. It's just the same. So both of them are being built up as his career goes on, and we're starting to see this a lot with the newer, um, I guess, era in MMA guys that they're just like starting from ground zero, and they are MMA guys. They're not specialists in any aspect. They're just MMA, and I think that's very helpful, and it's
Yeah.
showing obviously with his record. Um, and that brings me to the fantasy fight between him and Sean O'Malley, who's obviously the champion. Now, by the time they fight or would fight, could Sean have lose his title? Yeah, probably. I mean, there's
Yeah, could he
talks of
have
him
moved
and
up in weight? Yeah.
yeah, there's talks of him and Taporia. There's Marab's hanging in there somewhere. He might get his shots next or soon or whatever. And Marab's a beast. But let's just say for the video, if Peyton and Sean were to fight, I genuinely think Peyton Talbot has a chance to win. Obviously, I'm not counting Sean O'Malley out. I'm not the person that's going to be like, "Oh, this hot new guy, he's going to come in and destroy." Sean O'Malley's still freaking good.
Yeah.
Obviously, he can still beat him. If you're putting money on it right now, I'd probably put on Sean O'Malley. But the thing with Peyton Talbot is, I hark back to the Cheeto fight. Cheeto could not get gone at all in that
Yeah.
fight, and Sean just demolished him. But with like what 15 seconds left, Cheeto hit him with a body shot that hurt him bad.
Mhm.
My thought is with the way Payton Talbott strikes, if he starts striking early and he puts in work early in a 5-round fight, I do think Payton Talbot could hurt him, especially to that body, and he could
Yeah.
win that title. Payton
Uh,
Talbot could beat Sean O'Malley if he pushes early and does not make the mistakes Cheeto does. Obviously, it's easier to say after the fact, like, don't be like Cheeto, but with the striking style that Payton has, it works perfectly against the striking style of O'Malley. And if he catches a body shot, we could have a new champion, hypothetically, obviously, if they
yeah,
were to
yeah.
fight.
100%. I think that obviously Talbot has a long way to go, but man, I just can't help but think that he could become the next champion with just how good he is, man. I feel like his composure, his focus, his timing, where he's throwing these crazy strikes, but almost all of them are landing. Like his accuracy and timing is just almost perfection. Where
Yeah,
when
it
these
really
guys are
is.
throwing these crazy strikes, unorthodox strikes, a lot of the times they whiff. But man, it seems like he just can't miss. And I feel like he still has a long way to go. But man, I do think
And
that obviously I would favor Sean O'Malley right now.
yeah,
But if Talbot is able to get there, I mean, I might favor him in that at that point. If because that at that point, if he was able to
he
get
keeps
to the
getting better.
title,
Yeah.
he would be confirming what we already think. So if he's
Yeah.
able to
And
get to that point, it already legitimizes him. And I think at that point, I would probably favor him.
you just said the words, it seems like he can't miss. Who's another guy who we say seems like he can't miss? Sean O'Malley. So I
Exactly.
would love to see a fight between those two because both of them have great head movement. Peyton
Yeah.
Talbot was not letting Cameron Simon really get nothing on him. Obviously, Sean O'Malley barely lets anyone get anything on him. It would be such a high level fight.
Yeah, I would.
Man, it would be so much fun. But obviously, like we said 1,000 times, he has to get there. And to get there, what do you think
Yeah.
is next or could be next in the coming, I guess, year for Peyton Talbot?
I think there's a few guys I think that could be good matchups for him. Some guys off the top, I think Adrian Yanez could be good. I think
Yeah.
if they really want to do Dominic Cruz dirty, they could throw him in with Dominic Cruz and see what he can do in there because at this point, Cruz said he's not retired, but he probably would only want to fight highly ranked guys. So I doubt he would take that, but that would be super fun. I think another good one could be Pedro Munoz if they wanted to put him into somebody with some ranking. And yeah, they could also just maybe slow things down a bit and don't rush him too much and maybe just throw him in there with
Here.
somebody that he's probably going to be a big favorite against, but just get him a little bit more experience. But I honestly think that he has the skills to just be thrown to the wolves right away because I'm not high on guys like this too often, and he's one of those guys where I'm literally like I think I can just already see him being a champion and being a huge star, and it hasn't happened yet, but I feel good about it. Yeah,
We'll bring up this tapology here. We can look at the top, obviously, top
yeah.
15 we can disregard for now.
Ricky
Um,
Simone, that would be a good one too.
but yeah, Pedro Munoz, like Chris Gutierrez, Dominic Cruz, like these
Dude,
guys.
throw him in there
Henry,
with Cody.
if Henry was Cody, oh man,
That would be
Cody and
abused
him,
though.
that would be scary. Um, yeah, obviously some of these guys aren't in the UFC, but you know what I mean. Like,
Yeah,
there's a lot of names that like these guys down here. Giannis would be great.
yeah. Peyton Talbot
If
versus
Henry,
Yanez, I'd watch that. So that'd be
imagine
so
they
much
put
fun.
imagine they put him in there with Henry and he beat a former double champion.
I
Like
feel
the
like,
same with Cruz. Like if he beat Cruz,
yeah,
former champion, like
yeah.
you
I
know,
feel like I would probably throw him in there with Cruz over Triple C at this point, just because I'd want him to
the
probably
striking, yeah,
not be in there with an Olympian wrestler quite yet. But
yeah.
yeah, I feel like he could fare well against any of these guys. Like, man, he's just so good, and I think that yeah, Ricky Simone could be a good one too. Where Ricky's a pretty good
Mario
wrestler,
Batista would be
but
a
yeah.
firefight.
So there's so much fun fights. I feel like every single one of these could be like a fight night main event or something, and or on a pay-per-view card, get him some more eyes because man, they need to start building this guy up as their next future star because he has that it factor. He has that it factor. He has everything you need to be a star. He has the fighting style. He has the polarizing personality, and
Yeah,
he gets the finishes. So man, put him in there
and
against somebody. I mean, put
there's
him in there with somebody pretty good. I feel like don't. I feel like you don't need to protect him. I feel like he's ready.
when you get up there, when you're starting to get up there in the rankings, there's two guys that I see right here that I think would be amazing. and that's Davison Figueiredo because he's new
Yep.
to the division.
Yeah.
He's also new,
And he's
and then
short.
Song Yadong. Song
Whew.
Yadong is just lost,
Yep.
so he's going to be going back a little bit down. He's got to fight back. What a better way to fight back than against up and coming guy who, you know, in all intents and purposes, Song Yadong should be. But Willie is the question. And then
Yeah.
that gives Payton Talbott an into the division. Now, obviously, I don't think they'll do that for his next fight, but I think that could be, a fight coming up. Rob Font would be a crazy striking battle. Like,
Yep.
there's so many guys in this division. And then obviously, the top three, when you get up here,
Gets scary for
Payton
him.
Talbot versus Corey Sandhagen fight would be wild if that were to happen. Like, yeah, I just think there's so much depth in this division to begin with,
Yeah.
and a lot of them are great style matchups with the striking. So it'd be so much fun. And then, you know, realistically, if we're being really realistic, I do think his next fight will be like another no name type, throw him in there with whoever fight.
Yeah.
And then he could start moving on to the
Yeah.
um,
Let me
top
ask you
15 to
this.
20 area.
Yeah. How much fights do you think it would take if he wins them all to get a title shot? I think I think
In this
honestly 3 or
point,
4 wins. I think 3 or 4 wins all by spectacular fashion. Okay, maybe 4. 4 wins all by spectacular fashion. I'd put him at 6-0 in the UFC. I think that's perfectly timed for a UFC title shot.
yeah, I agree, but also it depends on the competition.
Yeah.
It depends on
100%.
how the UFC books him because, okay, if they give him 2 more cans or,
Yeah.
like, 2 lesser names, then I could see him having to do then 4 more after that, but if they give
Yeah.
him 1 more, like, lesser name and then they give him a Dominic Cruz or something and he beats him, and then they give him a Gutierrez, and then they start to go down, and then they give him a Figueiredo, and then it's like, okay, like, 1 more and you're a contender, and then they give him, like, I don't know, a Corey Sandhagen or a Song Yadong, and he beats them in
Yep.
easy fashion. It's like, okay, he's next. So I could see it depending 3, 4, or like 6. It just depends on who they book him against. But I do think that he could be a title contender by late 2025, early 2026. I do think
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
because
I 100% agree. I think he's the type of guy where he's gonna come in, potentially become champion in just a few years, where he has that type of ability to stay active if he keeps putting on these dominant performances where he's not
dude,
taking much damage and he can just stay
listen,
active, keep getting wins.
I I hate to harp on it. I really do. But the parallels between him and Sean O'Malley are absolutely insane.
Yeah,
Sean
Dana White
O'Malley,
Contender Series.
contender series guy, comes in, gets like what a few different. I mean, obviously, he took a little bit extra time because he got hurt a few times.
Yeah.
But in terms of the fights, he had like what a couple cans. I mean, right before he was facing Peter Yan, he fought that
Yeah, Paiva or yeah.
Paiva dude, whatever his name was, and he fought that green haired kid. I forget his name,
Yeah.
and he just destroyed those guys. And it's like, okay, he's moving up a little bit, and then he ended up fighting. I'm blanking on the name, but it ended in an eye poke.
Oh, yeah,
Uh,
yeah, Munoz. Pedro.
Munoz, Pedro Munoz, and then it was like he won by an eye poke. It was like
Yeah,
nothing, and then you're
yeah,
like, okay, well, guess what? Next is Peter Yan. So it's like
yeah,
if you take the Sean route because the parallels are so similar, the spectacular fashion of the Dana White Contender Series. You come in and make it look easy. You do it again and make it look easy. It's like, okay, one more. You might be fighting someone who we're going to put a test on you. Like
yeah,
the parallels to Sean O'Malley are absolutely insane. And I would love to just see like how a press conference would go between those two because it could go 2 ways. One, I think they could be friends. I
yeah,
think they would
yeah,
be great friends. Or
yeah,
two,
honestly.
maybe they're so similar that they're like, okay, fuck you, no, fuck you, I don't like you. Like, or it could be just straight up like, who's the better mixed martial
Yeah,
artist
I feel like it would
because they're so
be
good.
I feel like it would be Sean trying to antagonize him, and then I would wanna see how Payton would take it because I have not really seen him talk much trash to any opponents. I feel like
Anyone,
if
yeah,
anything, he just kinda
doesn't,
talks highly of how he feels about his own abilities, doesn't really talk about his opponents that
yeah,
much, so, yeah, I feel like that would be a super fun dynamic to see where I feel like Payton's more cool, calm, collected. Sean is pretty calm too, but he can get a little crazy at press conferences depending on the mood. So yeah, that would be super fun. And man, I just can't wait to keep talking about this guy as his career goes on. And
Dominic
Hey,
Cruz would be a guy who would fire him up on a press conference too, by the
yeah,
way.
man, 100%, dude. I'd love to see that too. Put that on a pay-per-view press conference, man.
Yeah.
That'd be so much fun. So yeah,
Open up a
hey,
pay-per-view card with that?
so in a year or two, when Payton Talbot is UFC champion, you can say Max and Brady said it first. Combat and
Yes.
Canvas
Okay.
said it first. MMA Today podcast,
Yes.
if you guys watch that, we said it first. So
Yeah.
we're just
Payton
gonna
Talbot,
and if he
he's
loses, oh, you didn't hear from us. You didn't hear from us.
no, you did not. Payton Talbot, the kid, he don't even have a nickname. He's this
Yeah.
that good.
For real.
Yeah, we really do think he could be a future champion, but let us know in the comments if you do, or if you don't, or who he
Yeah.
should fight next. Who should be his I guess a lead in to the top 15. Who do you think he should fight in the next one or two fights? And then obviously like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Like I said, click the link in our bio for the gaming channel, because we're moving up over there. And subscribe here because we're trying to move up here too. But yeah, Peyton Talbot could be the future.
Future champ. You heard it here first, guys.
And we'll see you next time. Peace.